you know, I looked, like, do I have number 6 or something?
I'm going to go ahead and call to order the Thursday, July 12th, 2018 meeting of the Zoning Board of Appeals for the City of Royal Oak, Michigan. The board does not write the zoning ordinance, but does have the authority to grant relief from it where practical difficulty or unnecessary hardship would result. The board will vote on each agenda item following a public hearing. Use variance requests require a minimum of 6 affirmative votes in order to grant the requested variances. Non-use variance requests require a minimum of 5 affirmative votes in order to grant the variances. If you would like to request that the board table or adjourn your case due to the absence of a full board, you must inform the chairperson immediately after the public hearing, and it looks like we are going to be down 2 people tonight.
Well, Amanda just
We're down 1 person tonight. Better, good. Petitioners shall do their best to limit their presentations to 10 minutes. Each participant in a public hearing shall do their best to limit their comments to 3 minutes. That being said, that moves us along to item B, which is approval of the minutes for the June 14th, 2018 meeting.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion.
support.
Second. Any corrections, additions, deletions? Not seeing any, I will call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That moves us along to item C1, which is our first case of old business, case number 180615, public hearing on the appeal of Culinary Investments LLC petitioner and the Nash Family Limited Partnership owner for the following variances. A use variance to permit conversion of a dining space to an arcade room with an existing restaurant. Mr. B is located at 213 through 219 South Main Street. Mr. Murphy.
We did hold a public hearing last month, and we went through the report of findings. Unless anybody has any particular questions for me, I think we'll kind of, if you'd like to go back and have the petitioner come back up and add anything that they might want to add for board members that maybe weren't here last month, we can maybe engage in some
That's not a terrible
conversation.
idea. Ms. Allen?
Good evening. I'm Kelly Allen here tonight with John Preblek. He is the sole member and owner of Mr. B's Gastropub. I don't want to, for all of you that were here last time, I'll just kind of whip through this quickly. So the background is that Mr. B's has been around since 1980s. Everybody knows that. And since the beginning of time, they've had pool tables, arcade games, pinball games, skee-ball games, open and notorious games in the establishment. We learned through Mr. Murphy last time that the ordinance in question was enacted after some to-do with the black cat. And it was because of teens really gathering in the downtown. And so the ordinance was addressed or enacted to address the problem of kids gathering and causing trouble. Mr. Prepelek has been paying the fee for the mechanical devices at Mr. B's since he took over. On April 23rd, the plan of operation was amended by the City Commission, and there is an area in that plan of operation designated as the North Room that contains the games. And the city became aware of it when we went in to request the plan of operation. John actually had moved those games before we had approval to move those games. And so when he was notified to cease, he did so. And then once we got the request for the variance filed, he was able to get up and running with the consent of the police department. The City Commission pointed out the reason that they believed that the ordinance was in place. And as you know, your ordinance defines an arcade as 3 or more mechanical devices in one place. Seems a little harsh to me. Okay. And even though B's primary use is not an arcade, it has operated effectively as a portion of an arcade, or an arcade pursuant to your definition of an arcade, for almost 40 years. The games are vintage games. They're not, crazy kid video type shoot 'em up games. And the purpose is to attract adults, families, not teens. The primary purpose of B's is food, and this is an ancillary use for entertainment for families primarily. Even the adults come in to play these vintage games. Because Mr. B's has had this use for 30-plus years, prohibiting it now, or a strict interpretation of your ordinance, would really bring unnecessary hardship to John. He is really excited about the project down here. He's done everything he can do to make himself and Mr. B stay relevant. Construction, no construction, a lot of investment in the place. And this is part of his continuing plan for success. So just because a portion of the property is an arcade under your ordinance, I don't think it should be, the ordinance should be strictly construed, because for all practical purposes, it can't be used for anything else, at least that portion of the property. This appeal does not result from any circumstances that the applicant put on himself. These were there when he took over the property, when the Nash folks owned the business. And the use of these games will not interfere with the character or use of the surrounding businesses. In fact, O'Toole's, that we know of, O'Toole's and Ye Old Saloon also have what would be defined as an arcade because they also have 3 or more games, which would put the city probably in a position of having to go around and enforce all these in the CBD. So we want to be able to preserve this right and in the CBD, and we are requesting at this point a use variance. We do understand the number of votes that is required, which is why we did not go forward last time, because we felt that there was a risk that we wouldn't have enough people to vote in favor. And I do think this is the minimum relief you can give Mr. Bees by giving the use of variance. And John can answer any questions that you have about the games or who it attracts or any of that.
Any questions for Ms. Allen or for John? I don't think we have any questions.
That's it? Okay.
Covered everything thoroughly. Sorry to make you
Very
get
nice
up.
job.
I will go ahead and open up the public hearing. Is there anybody in the audience who would like to speak on this matter? Not seeing anybody, I will go ahead and close the public hearing and bring it back to this side of the table. I saw Mr. Elfack first.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the variance as requested.
I support
Second.
that.
We have a motion, we have support. Any follow-up comments, sir?
Well, I think the hardship, unfortunately for him, is he's been stuck with something that he's had for a while now in that location. It hasn't, and now it's a problem for them. That's not his fault. I don't see this being a problem granting him this. I've gone there for years. My family loves it. The kids, especially using the video games on the side. I don't think this is going to turn into what the ordinance was trying to prevent in the first place. So I don't see any problem with granting this variance as requested.
Mr. Kroll.
Sometimes something happens and we overreact to it. We use the term family-friendly a lot in Royal Oak, and I don't know that there's a more family-friendly place than Mr. B's right now. The ability to watch a game, have the kids have a great time, everybody has a good time. So I've been there 3 different times. I really focused on the selection of machines that he has because they're all family-friendly type things that all the kids and probably adults will enjoy too. So I commend you on the space, and I'm really sorry you have to be here tonight.
Yes, ma'am.
Though I wasn't at the last meeting, I did have a chance to review the video, and I think that the petitioner made some valid points, and I'll be supporting it tonight.
Anybody else? Yeah, I'll be supporting it also, largely because Commissioner Pat Perush at the City Commission meeting really sort of ran down a synopsis of all the things that led to that ordinance, but also more importantly, she made it so clear why that ordinance is really no longer needed. And I think he just sort of fell into that spider's web, if you will. So if there's no other comments, I will go ahead and call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? You're all set. Thank you both. All right. That moves us on to case number C2 of old business, case number 180618, public hearing on the appeal of Holly Myers, petitioner and owner for the following 4 variances, and I guess I'll just let you go ahead and run through those,
Certainly.
so don't get run to the record twice.
Yes, the petitioner has provided a revised set of drawings based on the conversation that they had with you last month. The revised set of drawings that you have now eliminate the variance request to go over the total lot coverage allowable. The drawings reduce the variance request for the size of the accessory structure from essentially 2% over the 10% maximum to 1% over. It still necessitates a variance to expand the non-conforming structure because they are doing so by keeping it in line with the existing exterior wall of the current garage, which does not have the minimum 3-foot side yard setback. So those 2 variance requests still remain.
Any questions for staff at this point? All right, not seeing any. Is the petitioner present? If I could ask you to reintroduce yourself for the record, please.
Holly Myers from 1219 Ferris.
The floor is yours. Thank you.
Hi, so just a recap for, again, those who weren't here last month, why we ended up here. So my husband and I, last year at this time, were living in Asia, thinking that we were still going to be living in Asia for another 3 years until August came around, and then I found out I was going to have to be back in November. My husband was going to have to relocate within China to a new place and stay until April. September, mid-September, we had 1 week to come back and find a place for me to stay. And at that point, we came back and did a flurry of housing searches. Very much in our mind was what we owned and trying to find the appropriate space, as everybody does when they look for a new home, for all our belongings. So we do have stuff. And so we knew we needed either basement or garage storage to be able to put our things in. And when we looked at the home that we ended up purchasing, it stood out to us as an opportunity to live in Royal Oak, which I really wanted to do. And then when we looked up the zoning stuff, we saw the 800 as the maximum, walked off the property, and then on the 10%, really, with the information we had in that week, we made an estimate, and obviously we were off, and quite frankly, we didn't even catch the 30% part of it. So we really didn't realize that we bought the house needing a variance. We never intended to have to come and ask for a variance. We thought we were going to be able to do what we needed to do. That's really the hardship. I completely agree with Mr. Kroll that it is not a hardship for us to have stuff, right, that we have to store. But we really did try and make, in the time that we had, a due diligence, and we didn't have the details that told us we were going to need a variance with the estimates we had on the property size, and we didn't know that we were going to be over the 10% and the 30%. But based on what the comments last time, we did go back and laid out exactly what we have, and then with just to store my husband's woodworking equipment and the other things that we have, then draw the line around it, we were able to get out of the one variance and bring the other one down by half. So while, again, I understand it's not a hardship to have a lot of stuff, I would hope that the board could have some empathy for the amount of stress that is entailed with that kind of timing and trying to make a good decision. We did do it with the best of intentions and then led us here.
Very good. Any questions for the petitioner at this point?
Just a few questions.
I'm sorry.
Well, first of all, I appreciate you reducing the size of that and resubmitting, so thank you for doing that. But just a few questions. One, I assume that you like the original look of your previous design where it was 20 feet wide, it matched the full width, it seemed more balanced, it seemed more integral to the design. In the new edition, it seems to be a bit more off-centered, like the ridge lines don't match up, so I assume you like the original look better. So have you considered the inverse? Maybe what I'm saying is reduce the length and expand the width back to the original size. So just my quick math on this, if I look at it, so that takes you to 37 feet, reduction of the interior walls, that still gives you about 36 feet. That's 2 Chevy Tahoes that could fit in that garage. And that 2 feet of width you gain, you could place those motorcycles next to that rack. So just something to consider.
No, we did, absolutely. Unfortunately, the length is based on having to put a lift in. If you look, we have there where it says cars, there's actually going to be a car up and a car under. And with the lift, the Camaro is 16.5 feet long, and then with the hardware for the lift, we just packaged it in. We could only take that 1 foot off the back. And if we don't have that, then again, we got to go store something somewhere else. And then the rest of it is all just, my husband literally went out and puzzle pieced all of his woodworking equipment. He won't be able to work, he'll just be able to store. We'll have to move stuff out and move it around to be able to actually use the workshop. But yeah, thank you. I should have mentioned that.
Thank you.
Mr. Olfak?
I was going to ask a similar question, so it's all right.
Yes, ma'am.
I have a question about the lift, because there was another property that came up before us a while ago that they wanted to put a lift in their garage and they needed a height variance for that. Is your lift going to need this height variance?
No, but that is why we need the 10 feet. We can just, my husband's vehicle's a Solstice, so we've measured it. We know exactly what we need from a height viewpoint too, so it'll just fit.
So I have another question then. would it be a hardship if you had to actually store one of the vehicles off-site? I mean, you're in a position where you have the luxury of having 4 vehicles, it sounds like, plus 2 motorcycles. You know, this Royal Oak, we don't necessarily have garages, period, that will contain that type of equipment, fun stuff. So if it was denied tonight, would you be able to, I would assume, find other places to store one of the vehicles, or even both of them for that matter?
Well, obviously, since we now own the house, we'll do what we have to do, but there's a premium to live in Royal Oak. This is the most expensive house we have ever owned. And then, at least when you're adding onto a garage, you can feel like maybe you're going to get value back out of it versus if you've got to rent something, which again is also very expensive here, because we looked at just temporary storage places when we have to do construction. It'll be a burden. We'll do what we have to do.
Doesn't sound like you use these vehicles often if you're going to be storing them on a lift.
Yeah, they're classics.
So that they could be stored off-site someplace.
Yes,
And there'd be
they
more
could.
room for the woodworking shop, too. That's some of my concerns there.
Any other questions? I'm going to ask you to take a seat real quickly and open up the public hearing. Is there anybody in the audience who would like to address us on this matter?
We did also get signatures from our 2 neighbors that they were okay.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, not seeing any hands, I will go ahead and close the public hearing and bring it back to this side of the table. Mr. Kroll?
I'm going to make a motion to approve this.
Motion by Mr. Kroll,
For discussion's sake, I'll support.
in support. Before you go into what you're going to do in support of your motion, can you run through the variances for me, what they were and what they are now, just so I have a firm understanding on it?
You would need to modify or withdraw your variance requests, your motion, and make a new motion, unless you wanted to approve
The original.
the original, correct? So that's the one that's on the table right now.
Yeah, well, I want to make a friendly.
Well, let's talk about what the new variance request would be prior to doing that. And it would be, A would be waive 1% instead of
Right.
1.9%. B would be eliminated.
Correct.
C and D would remain.
Okay, that's what I thought.
So we're giving, they were both very much certain about what they wanted to do last month, and I really felt that they didn't have the votes up here, and asked them to go back and really take a look at what they can do. They brought back a compromise. I don't think at this point they're asking for very much, so I appreciate the compromise on their behalf, and my compromise is to approve it today or vote for it as opposed to not last week.
What are you highlighting as a hardship here?
What are we giving them? 1 foot?
1% on the allowable.
What does that amount to, Joe? Do you have any idea?
If it's 400 square feet, it's 4 square feet, I'm assuming.
4 square feet? I'm gonna throw that in, Les.
And then 7 or 8 inches. And
Yeah, I think that's somewhat reasonable.
let me go to Mr. Olfak, because he's supporting, so, or seconded.
I'm torn because yes, I appreciate very much what they're trying to do. And I understand their situation, although I also agree this is a hardship they brought upon themselves, not only with the stuff, but the fact of, yes, they can use their lot as it is now. Maybe not all their stuff is stored in the garage. Maybe they can't do what they want, but unfortunately, they can still use their garage as it is. The thing is granting this would create something that's going to be there for a good 40 to 80 years, and it's going to be left here. That I'm having trouble with that. Although I agree, it's very minimal what we're granting.
We allow 800.
Well, let him finish.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And it's a very minimal amount that they're just requiring over what's required. So I'm torn in that aspect of, we've done stuff before where it's just minorly over, so that's where I'd like to hear a little bit more discussion, and maybe it'll sway me one way or another.
I think I saw Mr. Clatt and Ms. Anderson, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, I have a garage that is pretty much just used for storage. And I had a car in there, I think, about 20 years ago. So it's not mandatory that someone would need all the space to put their cars, because oftentimes a car is left in the driveway. I know it's a want, a really deep one on their side, but I'm just not seeing the hardship here. And I think that it can be used as it is if they stay within the guidelines.
So, again, I appreciate the reduction. I don't agree with the design, but at the end of the day, you do have your two immediate neighbors' support, so I'll be in support as well.
Mr. Mueller.
Okay, so the 0.7 feet, that's a pre-existing condition from the fence. That's been there. We do that all the time with somebody building on the same foundation again, or adding a second floor. And 1%, as you mentioned, is an unbelievably small amount. I mean, we're asking for a lot more. It could be, maybe it's more than 4 square feet, but this isn't much at all. I don't look at 1%. And I hate full lot coverage, by the way, so just on a personal level, but I don't look at 1% as somehow something that will be adverse for the next 50, 60 years in our community. It's now at the level of being very, very small. Nothing else are we worried about. We're not talking about whether they have a lift in their garage or anything else. We're just talking about the 1% coverage with this final design, which they took, like I said, 50% of that off and got rid of at least one of the other variances, right? Yeah, so they certainly came back when we asked them to take a look at it too, and came back with a lot less.
Any other comments? Well, I'll chime in then. I will be supporting this, and I think Mr. Mueller summed it up very nicely. And we're talking about a very, very small amount here, and while there's a pretty good argument that a true hardship doesn't exist, in my mind, if somebody's wanting to come to Royal Oak, spend that kind of money and make this city their home, and we're talking about a 1% variance, then I'm not going to sit here and squabble over a couple square feet. So, Mr. Kroll.
Yeah, I just might add, I tried to get in the backyard and couldn't. I kind of drove around, and that's really important to me to see what's going to be seen from the other side. I couldn't see the garage. I could kind of see the top of the house, but I couldn't even see the garage. So, I think this falls in that kind of, to me, is making their life easy without ruining the neighborhood. So.
Did we amend?
Yeah, because I want to make sure that there's an appropriate motion on the board. So can you repeat your motion?
Yes, I will make the motion as amended by the.
Okay, which is to waive 1% of the maximum allowable lot coverage, 10% for the garage, to waive 0.7 feet of the minimum required 3-foot setback, and to alter and expand the non-conforming structure.
That's exactly what I meant.
See,
Thank
that's
you, Justin.
exactly
Reading your mind. That's perfect.
Nailed it.
And the second is okay with that?
Yes.
Not seeing any other hands, I will go ahead and call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
No.
Just Ms. Anderson, yes. You are all set. Thank you. Motion does pass. Thank you. All right, that moves us on to item C3 of old business, case number 180620, public hearing on the appeal of 3003 East Kenilworth LLC, petitioner and owner for the following variances, and I will hand the football off to you, sir.
Mr. Chair, I need to recuse myself from this one as my company has direct involvement.
Very good, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Murphy.
Sure. I'll keep my comments brief. I'm sure that the petitioner has plenty that they would like to offer for the board's consideration. If the board has any questions before we proceed, I'd be happy to go through the report again, but I think we can probably accomplish that as we continue our discussion about the variance requests. So if you'd like, we can hand it back over to them and see if they have any additional comments first.
And any questions for staff at this point? All right, then I'll go ahead and ask the petitioner to come forward. Mr. Cowan, good evening.
Well,
Mr. Chairman and members of the board, we made a decision that since there's not a full board tonight, that we would like to defer, which is
Very good.
I believe, our ability under your rules.
Absolutely.
I hope everyone knows that's not any indication that we don't trust you. That's not the case at all. We appreciate your service. I do. I've been here numerous times. But because of the fact that Mr. Klatt had to recuse himself, we're on a very thin margin. So we want to respect everybody's ability to fully and fairly debate it. So I apologize to any of the neighbors and residents who have come this evening. We did have people come last month, and they spoke at the public hearing. But we're going to respectfully request to be deferred.
Very good.
Okay.
Do you want that in the form of a motion, or just hold it over to next month?
The board can make a motion to accept it. That'd be fine. A nice
I'll-
clean record.
I'll make a motion to accept Mr.
Mr.
Collins.
Kroll and
Second.
Mr. Curtis? Any discussion? Not seeing any, I will call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
See you in August, sir.
Thank you. We'll see you in steamy August.
I think it's steamy enough now. All right. Moving right along, then, we are on to new business, item D1,
Get rid of that one.
which is case number F180704, public hearing on the appeal of Kimberly O'Neill, petitioner and owner for the following variance to the city's fence ordinance, waive 1 foot of the maximum allowable 3-foot height to install a 4-foot site obscuring vinyl picket fence within 10 feet of the intersection of a driveway and sidewalk located at 1317 Bowman Avenue. Mr. Murphy.
Best way to reference this request is to review the aerial photograph, which is on the screen in front of you.
I'm going to grab a bottle of water real quick.
Absolutely. The petitioner is proposing to install a picket fence, and it has, I'll refer to the graphic as well, but the fence varies in height as it, based on its design from 4 feet at its highest point. And in this vision triangle, this corner where the driveway intersects the public sidewalk, the fence ordinance states that the fence or no portion of the fence can be taller than 3 feet. So based on the petitioner's design, and I'll at its highest point, that fence is 4 feet high. So they applied for a fence permit from the building division, and the building division had turned it down based on the fact that, again, at its highest point, it only can be 3 feet at that location within that triangular area where the driveway intersects the sidewalk. So they're seeking a waiver to allow this particular design, again, varies in height.
So what's there now is legal.
The petitioner will probably give you a better understanding of the exact measurement. They provided some really nice photographs to give you an indication of what's there. However, I don't know the height of that
Seemed like it was about
fence.
3 feet.
Petitioner might be able to give you an indication of a measurement.
Any questions for Mr. Murphy? Yes, ma'am.
I have a quick question. And do we designate a difference between a site obscuring and a total privacy fencing?
Yes, there is a definition in the fence ordinance. I'm not entirely familiar with it, but it is referenced in a write-up here, so I'll refer to, get to that page. The deputy building official cites in his letter that to be considered site obscuring because it's not at least 80% open space. The design that they provided is roughly 50%. So to be considered non-site obscuring, at least needs to be at least 80% visually open.
When, being between the pickets, so
That seems to make sense to me, yes.
the pickets are closer than 1 picket apart?
Well, for every open space, there's a picket.
Okay, so it's
So-
not the picket itself, it's not the
The open.
space, like it's not just that little space, it's cumulative? for
Cumulative,
all
yes,
of them?
correct.
Okay.
There's a bigger space
So-
between the pickets.
The only thing that would qualify is your chain link fence probably under
Yes,
this.
that's probably correct.
Like a wrought iron, real thin rail.
Oh, maybe, yeah,
No,
right.
okay.
That's true.
Any other questions for Mr. Murphy? Not seeing any. Is the petitioner present?
Hi, good afternoon.
Good
My
evening.
name is Kimberly O'Neill. I am the owner of 1317 Bowman Avenue. And I come here today, yes, as you mentioned, to try and get a variance request for our fence. I moved in August 2016, and our current fence is 4 foot. I've been working really hard the last couple of years to try and beautify our property, make improvements to it, both inside the house and outside. And one of the reasons I bought this house is because of the backyard. It's beautiful, lots of gardening beds. So I have spent literally hundreds of dollars landscaping these last few years, these last couple of years. And so one of the hardships with, if we went with the 10-foot triangle off of the driveway, is it would cut off a lot of the landscaping that I've been working with. One of the other things to notate is that our 3 neighbors that share our corner all have at least 4 foot or higher fences. So we are seeking, yes, a 1 foot variance. Our current fence is 4 foot. The one we are looking for is 4 foot at its max, and the lowest dip is 3.5 foot.
Any questions for the petitioner? I guess we don't have any. I'll ask you to take a seat real quickly so I can open up the public hearing. I'm guessing nobody's going to want to speak. Is there anybody in the audience who'd like to speak on this matter? All right, not seeing anybody. I will close the public hearing, ma'am. Miss? Why don't you come back up just in case we have questions? In case anybody wanted to speak. So I will bring it back to this side of the table for discussion or action.
I have a quick question for Joseph then.
Of course.
So if it was just the post that was 4 feet and everything else was shorter, does the post actually, is that considered part of the fence, or is that?
Yeah, I would imagine it would be.
Okay, so
I
it would-
I don't administer the fence ordinance on a
Okay.
daily basis.
I just was,
for-
wanted, because this is a little swooping thing, and I
Yes.
kind of want to get an idea of how.
It's an integral part of the fence, so I imagine it's
So-
included.
Am I able to add something really quick?
Well, let us have our discussion. We'll get back to our
Okay,
promise.
Okay, thank you.
I just wanted to kind of clarify.
Well,
that.
and actually, and I know this is probably an obscure question that you're not going to be able to answer, but do you have any idea what the rationale behind 80% versus 60% versus 40% open is?
No, I don't.
There's a
Easy
couple
answer.
architects on the board.
No, I was actually going to ask a question real quick, sorry. I was
Get me
gonna,
out.
did you look into the whole wrought iron fence or similar style that would be a little bit more open,
Yes, we did look into wrought iron. It's more expensive.
obviously? but-
We also looked into chain link. Of course, that's less expensive, but it's not as attractive.
Right.
So of course, we love the style of the picket, and our current fence, we don't have any problem, honestly, pulling out from the driveway. We can see the sidewalk, in our opinion, just fine. But one thing I was going to notate is that our current fence in its current state is literally falling apart, and we're worried is a safety hazard. I'm not a very strong person, and I could probably push it over myself. So we are trying to expedite this.
So is this fence legal now, what they have there?
Current fence, no. Not if she's indicating that it's 4 feet, no.
It is the original fence.
Yeah, I pulled into the driveway, which I always do, and kind of looked through the fence and see if I could see a little kid on a bike coming through, and I couldn't, so I'm old and my eyes aren't as good as yours probably, but, so I had a concern that we're cutting off that safety. And I could appreciate the gardens, but, I think the safety of the neighborhood's more important. I think the fence you've selected is beautiful. I have no question, I was concerned about the safety.
This guy.
Oh,
I
I'm
said,
sorry, I
just
didn't see your hand. I
as an
apologize.
observation, she is making the condition better. It's 4 feet now, and at the max, it's 4 feet, but it will be reduced.
That's true.
So I guess it'll definitely, the pictures, that fence is deteriorated, it's rotted, it's in bad shape, so.
And I thought that might have been why I couldn't see through, because it was kind of warped, and I wasn't getting a straight shot through as well.
So this is no more, no less open than what's currently there.
Correct.
And actually, with the sloping design, it'd probably be a little more open. Any other questions or comments?
Would you be open to discussing that, what is it, a 10-foot angle? How does that ordinance, when you have that corner, is it a 10-foot 45 angle? Is that the normal,
The visibility triangle.
the visibility triangle? Thank you. I couldn't think of what this,
Correct. I'll show it on the screen in
Yeah,
front of you.
yeah.
So we measured 10 feet up the driveway,
ah,
and 10 feet down the sidewalk.
uh-huh.
So that triangle.
And it would cut into the work in that corner that's already been done, but would you be open to considering that? And here's why I ask. By nature, a picket fence has a part you can't see through and a part you can see through, and that. But when you put that on a corner, the possibility of not seeing through this and then this next part blocking what you could see through, and a kid on a big wheel, do those still exist? I'm old. A kid on a bike, coming, you know, I'm having a hard time dealing with the possibility of someone being hurt because we didn't hold to that 10-foot triangle. So I'm asking, would you be willing to modify to a 10-foot triangle?
I think we would probably look at other fencing options at that point.
Mr. Mueller?
Joe, do you know how long ago that ordinance came in? Because I'm guessing it's relatively recent. Because we have lots of fences that are tall that go, you know, and obviously the ordinance probably came in because of the fact that people had been run over or close to it or whatever. And I have the same problem. I understand all of this, but I would have trouble voting on something where you're possibly putting people at risk. And that's exactly what this was designed to prevent. And we've made people with 6-foot fences on that corner cut them down to 3 feet going on that, you know, if they didn't do the triangle. I don't know if there's any way to, you know, alter the fence style that you're wanting to buy to make it shorter in that area. Possibly you can put it further in the ground so it's only 3 foot tall, not 4 foot. And even then just for that 10 foot, if it dropped to 3 foot, I think it meets the requirements. Yeah, but yeah, on a personal level, I just have a problem voting on something that might put kids at risk. That's it.
And
Yeah, we'll go
going,
first.
going by that, if the one fence that's also in that same area, a little bit farther away though, is over by Whittier Park, with the new houses up where they were on the corner of a side street.
Yeah.
And they wanted that, and that turned out fine of how that, they had to do the same thing, and it turned out fine with the stepping down. And as Ms. Anderson always brings up, you can always put in shrubbery there to hide that extra foot there. Because I agree, I feel bad because I really like the fence style. And it's better than what's there, but it's still the possibility of giving something that in the future some kid could come by and get smushed because they didn't see the car coming. I would not want that on my conscience, so,
Does somebody have a compromise?
no.
The only thing you can do is have the fence to 3 foot.
Yeah.
Or
At
you
that
have that
part.
triangle. I mean, that's,
Well, in fact, even the triangle still needs if it's got this design that reaches to 4 feet at places with a triangle, it's still a variance?
no.
No.
Just maximum of 3 feet.
Yeah, it can't be over, it can't be 4 feet, it can be 3 feet in that triangle.
Oh, in the triangle, it
Yeah.
has to be 3 feet. I
Yes.
Either have to triangle it or
Thank you.
drop it down.
We've had people that had 6-foot privacy fence and cut them down.
Yeah.
To 3
Like,
foot.
as it's sweeping up, now this can sweep down to 3 feet right there at the corner and sweep, after a
Yeah.
little bit, come back and sweep
Take some
back up.
altering of the fence, and you might check and see if that can be done.
I think they could definitely do that. It can
Because that may be the,
customized.
because it just, it's too much of a risk when it's a safety issue to give variances.
And Bob, to sort of answer your previous question, I think it was about 7 or so years ago when this fencing ordinance came into place where they started enforcing the 10-foot visibility
Yeah.
triangle. And there was a lot of people who were a little
Well-
miffed coming in front of the city commission because they had to modify fences that were very previously built and they didn't realize.
Well, I
the
think if you
ordinances
already
changed.
have it built, you're somewhat grandfathered, aren't you? Can you go back after you've changed zoning and make somebody change?
Yeah, that's not
Okay,
on the
yeah.
table.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it doesn't,
On consultation with the attorney.
yeah, it doesn't tend to happen just from looking at things that you already had it. Chances are you've still got it.
So,
I mean, so I guess what I would say to you, and this is just me talking, I don't want to speak for the entire board. I mean, you can sort of hear where the conversation is going. We could always vote to table this till next month if you want to go back and take another look at it and bring us back modifications that we could consider, as opposed to us just saying no, at which point then it's dead for a year, and, you know, we certainly want to give you every chance to make it work.
So just so I'm understanding correctly, if we were able to make that corner both swooping, using the same style same style fence that we're talking about, we just made that corner swooping, that would be okay?
At 3 feet,
3 feet.
higher than 3 feet high.
But you're saying it would all still have to be 3 feet?
In that safety area.
At the highest point.
Yeah, 10 feet and 10 feet. That
You can
corner
swoop it
would have to
lower
be
if
done
you
with
wanted
3
to,
feet.
but I don't know why you'd want to do that.
We need a variance.
Ms. Anderson, I'm sorry.
You might want to consider encompassing like an architectural detail in this too. If you shrink it down 3 feet, maybe you could do some gates that look like they open. I don't know if you've ever tried blowing leaves out of the backyard, but when you can open something like that, I mean, just to give that 3 foot area look like it's supposed to be there, I guess is what I'm saying, because I think that's maybe your concern, that it's gonna go sweep, sweep, and then it's, you might be able to put some nice black hardware and make it look like it opens up, which if your architect or your fence builder could make a hinge, that would just FYI.
I think if
It's
we
kind of a
went-
nice way
Sure.
to get leaves out.
I think if we went with a 3 foot fence, we would just change the complete style, because at that point, we can almost just walk over it with the scallop.
Okay.
I mean, we can still make a motion to table this. You can always call City Hall and say, we're doing something else entirely. And then they'll just tell us next month it's gone.
Okay, yeah, then that would be great. That would give us some time to consider our options.
I would move to table this then?
Support that.
Any discussion? Not seeing any, I will call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
So that you've got a couple of options in front of you at
Okay.
least.
Okay, thank you, guys.
Thank you. All right, so where are we? Item D2 of new business, case number F180705, public hearing on the appeal of Nancy and David May, petitioner and owner for the following variance to the city's fence ordinance. Waive 2.5 feet of the maximum allowable height of 6 foot to install an 8'5" tall site obscuring fence along the east property line at 4364 Arden Place. Mr. Murphy.
This is a residential property on the west side of a property that abuts, a funeral home that abuts Woodward Avenue. And they have a fence that separates the two of them. You can see from in the photographs that the fence is dilapidated via windstorm or some type of natural disaster. And the petitioner or the residential property would like to put up their own fence, and that's at 8.5 feet tall. Fence ordinance only allows a maximum height of 6 feet when it's at the property line. It can go higher to 8 feet if it's stepped back a certain amount from the property line, but the petitioner has requested to place it on the property line, which would allow for them to only be 6 feet tall. So they're seeking a waiver of 2.5 feet. They've got some elevation, we've got some good photographs as well as the elevations of what they're proposing.
Any questions for Mr. Murphy?
Well, do you know the height of the wall at Art Van? I measured that, but I didn't get back there to measure that wall. That seems like that would be the highest
Well,
elevation.
when they get up here, we can ask them that.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know that off the top of my head without going through the file. I don't.
Any questions for Mr. Murphy? All right, not seeing any. Are the petitioners present? Good evening.
I'm Nancy May, and I'm kind of surprised I'm here because we are just basically replacing what's been in existence for a very long time. And that whole block of Arden Place, which is a pretty short block, does have the same type of fencing, except for the man that's immediately to the south of me, only because their contractor screwed up and gave them 7 feet instead of 8. And I think my husband's guesstimated there are spots down near Art Van where it might be even as high as 14 feet. And so we're just consistently doing what's been done there. The whole deal with Dream Cruise, it starts in April and lasts through November when the snow falls, is a big consideration with the privacy issues. And so we're just anxious to replace what's there.
Well, excuse me, I measured that to be 90.5 inches, what's there. That doesn't, 8.5
I
sounds
think
like more than that.
according to the fence contractor, I think it said the fence would go from 7'6" to 8'5". So I get, there's apparently a slope in the land that creates
Has that fence been up for a long time?
long time.
It looks like a seawall or something. I kept looking, I said, there's a seawall up here.
The steel
The
on the
seawall
other side.
went, yeah.
Corrugated metal.
Did you put that, did you install that, or was that there when you got there?
No, we installed that. That was more a decorative issue than,
Somebody sold you not a really good idea there, huh?
I'm sorry?
Somebody sold you not a real good idea over time.
No, it's been fine. The wood part's just very old, and we've discussed with Mr. Cannell the fact that their snowplow people build the snow up against that wooden fence because there's a lack of space to put the snow. So that gets up against the wood, stays there for a long time, and it's over the years rotted the wood. So
Any other questions for the petitioner?
What material are you using on this fence you're proposing? Wood?
Yep.
Why would you go back to wood again? I'm
Well,
just curious.
the wood fence is going to be there. That's what.
Yeah, it would seem. if
It's
there's
already
such
a wood
snow-
fence. So we're just replacing the wood fence. I don't know what kind of wood it is.
Ms. Anderson?
There's two fences side by side, the corrugated fence.
The
steel
corrugated
panel,
fence was applied to the wood fence
was applied
for
to it. and so
decorative,
it's-
for
well,
decorative issues more than,
Okay, so, but it's not really decorative, it's still another fence next to a fence, I think. I mean,
It appeared that way, but maybe from the inside, it doesn't look that way. I mean, I didn't think
well,
it was
if they
decorative.
took
I thought
down
it
the
was a
wood
seawall.
fence, I think there would be a corrugated fence there.
No, I think that would be like
No, it's
falling on the
attached.
floor.
It's a what?
it's attached.
It's attached.
Okay.
It's up against the wood, I guess, to keep, but it seems like it would catch wind and push on that wood fence pretty hard, and maybe
Well, it
that's what
has.
caused some of this,
Yeah, that's one.
yeah.
There's a huge separation in those two.
So, oh, sorry.
Go ahead, finish it, and then we'll go to Mr. Klatt.
I wanted to ask Joseph, whose responsibility was it to put up, was it the funeral home at one time, but they got out of it somehow to put up an 8-foot tall fence that should have been there?
When I referenced the site plan for the funeral home, the approved site plan, it notes, this thing keeps jumping around on me. Okay. I'll point on the aerial photograph for an explanation. I'll extend the line here all the way across. That's actually still an open public alley. That public alley hasn't been vacated. But what the city did was sign a lease agreement with the funeral home to allow them to pave it as part of their private parking lot. And they use it as parking spaces, and they're required to have a screening wall that separates them from the residential property. The approved site plan illustrates a 6-foot wood fence. So again, that's a public alley,
Right.
but they have a license agreement to utilize it for essentially their private purposes. And the site plan references a 6-foot wood fence. Now, the fence did fall down at the exact same time. The petitioner had come in for permits and filed to come in front of you tonight. The funeral home came in shortly thereafter, but didn't make it on this agenda. They'll be on next month's agenda because they need a variance request as well to put back up an 8-foot fence when it clearly says on the site plan 6 feet, and the ordinance only allows 6 feet.
Should have had them all here
So-
together.
At the timing of the applications and the meeting
They are
deadlines,
here.
he is here to provide some
Okay,
some
good,
verbal
good.
comment,
That'll help,
but
yes.
they themselves, because they have the fence that runs the entire length across probably 5 or 6 total resident, up to 5 and 6 total residential properties, they'll be seeking a variance request next month. While they all relate to each other, the building department has informed me that the petitioner tonight would be constructing their own fence.
You know, I think I'm going to break protocol a little here. Sir, you're the gentleman she's referring to? Yeah, please come up, both of you. So, you want to erect a fence next to the fence that she's asking to erect this evening?
No, we're talking about the same 8-foot fence.
Okay.
They were in support of our neighbor to fix and repair the existing 8-foot fence on our property line.
Okay. I mean, that sort of simplifies things a little bit.
It's not, I'm sorry. It's the homeowner's responsibility to separate from commercial property that way? Or it's the commercial property's responsibility to separate from the residential property?
The commercial property has an approved site plan which does illustrate a fence to separate them via that license agreement that they're going to use the city's public alley. They have to have a fence the entire length at a height of 6 feet.
So whose fence is it?
The fence belongs to the holder of the license agreement, which is the funeral home. The building department has informed me that the petitioner tonight has applied for a fence permit to construct a separate fence. And that's what the variance request is for tonight.
This is very confusing.
I think I've got it. The wood fence is the funeral home. The corrugated is theirs. And because they would like the corrugated to be the same height as it is now, they want this portion for
They
the
have their
funeral
own
home.
separate request.
Okay.
Who's paying for the wooden fence, just out of?
We were.
Oh?
A little convoluted, all right.
Well, the other thing is, at some point, Art Van was given permission to raise their Mungo big cement fence back there. And I can't understand why there would be any question about a consistent height along that whole area. It's a unique situation there. And common sense would say that it's a good thing to have all the fences the same height.
Yeah, step back on microphone if you would, just for the people watching at home.
And it's good for us.
Do you, can you step to the microphone, please?
Me?
Yeah, so they can hear you on TV.
And smile for us, please. So, do you know how high the wall is of behind Art Van?
As I mentioned earlier, I think it goes anywhere from like 10 to 14 feet, my husband guesstimated.
One, it looked more in line with the fence, the part I'm talking about.
Well, as
It
you
looked
go
about-
farther south.
Yeah, this is further north, because I didn't really look further south. I was parked kind of right at your fence, but as I looked down that way, I thought that if I was gonna grant anything, I'd grant that height line, whatever that is, so that we don't have all this going on with all different fence styles and heights. But I didn't measure that, so I don't know what it is.
Mr. Mueller.
Okay. I think we're beating this to death.
Yes.
I think
Because-
you're right.
What she's after is a variance to be able to put in an 8.5-foot fence when you can only do 6 foot. Okay? Now, if somebody wanted to do that in their backyard between me and the neighbor, we would, right off the bat, be going no. This particular case, it's a backyard of a house that goes up against the parking lot of a business on Woodward. If there's any place that all of us would want an 8-foot fence, this is it. I'm almost surprised that we don't have a rule that says you can put an 8-foot fence in this case. So I think all we've got to do is decide, do we want to give the variance for the 8-foot fence, and it doesn't matter who the heck pays for it or exactly how they do it. They've got a variance to put an 8.5-foot fence in there. Does that make sense?
Is that a motion? I support.
I will make a motion.
I support.
Okay, I will make a
I
motion.
haven't opened up the public hearing yet, but we will get to that point.
Oh, you're right, I can't, it's public hearing, okay. But, yeah, it makes no sense at all to not be able to have an 8-foot fence in that case in this city, to me.
Okay, well, with that being said, is there anybody in the audience who wants to address the ZBA on this matter? All right. Am I seeing any hands? I'm sorry. Okay, no, good. I'll go ahead and close the public hearing. What, did you want to speak, ma'am?
No, I'm with Paul. I just want to make sure we're understanding that we're talking about one fence here, not a corrugated fence and a wood fence. We're talking one wooden fence.
Correct. If you go back in time to when the Art Van first opened up, and you made, I live like around the block from you, so I'm very familiar
Oh,
with.
you do?
With some of the headaches that you deal with, and when you have a weekend where it's a beautiful summer day and you got the cruises out, and Art Van has a big sale, and all these things are going on, I mean, it can get a little hectic there, and I'm sure you're chasing people out of your parking lot all the time. I can't even imagine what you put up with, but I think Bob really summed it up well in terms of if there's a realistic need for a fence of this type,
Doesn't matter what.
this is the location. And also, if you go back to when that art van was originally built, they allowed them to build a fence, probably unlike anything else that may exist in the city, strictly because of the fact that we're talking about 13 and a half in Woodward, an art van store that was going to be quite a, well, I don't want to call it a monstrosity, but certainly a big building for that site. So they were trying to shield the neighborhood directly behind them as much as possible, and obviously, she's in the crosshairs. So,
So is that a motion?
I can't make a motion, but.
Bob already made one.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to grant, thank you, thank you.
Support that
To-
motion.
To grant case, what is it, F18075 for the variance of being allowed to have an 8.5-foot side obscuring fence on the east property line.
Support.
Then we already have support.
We have support.
All right, is there any additional discussion? Did I see your hand, Mr. Curtis?
No.
I have nothing more to add.
I think we've beaten this to death. I think that's a fair observation. All right, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you both for your patience. You're all set. Motion
Next
passes.
step, how do we get our variance?
We'll mail you a letter, and I'll let the building department know tomorrow,
Thank you.
tomorrow morning.
Come back next month for the other one.
We'll be in conversation with you.
With regards to next month? Okay.
Thank you, sir. All right, so that, have a great night, you guys. That takes us to item number D3 of new business, which is case number 180721, public hearing on the appeal of RT&S Building LLC, petitioner and owner for the following variance, waive 3 feet of the minimum required length of 25 foot related to 5 parallel parking spaces to permit construction of a 3-story mixed-use building with ground-level retail sales and 8 residential dwelling units on the upper floors, along with an off-street parking lot along South Center Street, 924 South Main, and 921 South Center. I understand there's going to be a second variance added to this?
No.
Okay.
This particular request has been withdrawn by the petitioner. And a little explanation as to why that occurred. When petitioner's architect came in to file an application for approval, they first needed to go for site plan and special land use approval from the Planning Commission, which was 2 days ago.
Right.
We had informed them, they were insistent that they wanted to get the approval process as fast as possible, so they wanted to be on the agenda for the Zoning Board of Appeals 2 days later. We said, there's always the risk that the site plan that you provide us does not get approved by the Planning Commission. It may necessitate different variances, so if we prepare your paperwork for tonight's meeting, it's based on an unapproved site plan. They insisted upon doing that, paid the fee. Planning Commission did approve the site plan. That's been modified.
Been modified,
So
right.
they now need to file a new variance request and come in front of you 2 months from now.
We get more money?
We do, there's a new fee. So
We get our normal cut? We're all
you'll
good?
get your normal cut. They've withdrawn this request, and they shall return if they decide to move forward based on the modified site plan that was approved by the Planning Commission.
Well,
But we're not going to see that till September, you're saying?
That's correct.
Get some sleep
I
tonight.
might be able
All
to.
right. Yeah, I didn't know if you could modify it that quickly or what have you, so. All right, so with that being withdrawn, I guess we move on to item D4, case number 180722, public hearing on the appeal of Castler Construction, Inc., petitioner, and Ryan Gibas and Brent Schrum, owners for the following variances: alter, expand a non-conforming structure, waive 2.7 feet of the minimum required 5-foot south side yard setback to permit construction of a second-story rear addition to an existing non-conforming single-family dwelling located at 1127 North Altadena. Mr. Murphy.
The petitioner has a mostly 2-story home at the corner of North Altadena and Derby. You can see based on the aerial photograph in front of you that there's a 1-story addition off the rear of the house. And that, at that point, the structure is 2.3 feet from that south side lot line. The petitioner is proposing to do a second-story addition, full second-story addition across the rear of the house. So it'll be a second-story addition off the portion that doesn't have a second story now, and then there'll be a second-story addition above the first floor that exists now. So that second story will continue or be in line with the wall, exterior wall below. And again, that wall maintains a non-conforming setback. So the second-story addition that they're proposing doesn't conform to the required 5-foot side yard setback. They're seeking a waiver to expand the non-conforming structure in a non-conforming manner. And I'll refer to the drawings that they've provided in the report as well.
Nothing's giving you a hard time tonight.
Yes, it's jittery.
Well, as he jumps on, is there any questions for Mr. Murphy at this point? All right, not seeing any. Are the petitioners present?
Hello.
Good evening.
Hi. My name is Tamis Donaldson, and I'm the architect for this project, and I'm here with the builder, Rick Kessler, and one of the owners, Ryan Gibbous. So I'm here to speak for us. And the idea for this project really is to do a seamless addition to this house that was built in 1923. So I think in 1923, there wasn't really rules regarding side yard setbacks. So the idea is to expand the house somewhat, just to bring it up to more of a modern lifestyle, and adding a kitchen and a master suite off the back of the house. And this house is based on a Dutch colonial revival style, so it's got a gambrel roof. And so the idea is to extrude the gambrel roof to the addition, so we just go straight out the back. And so the part that we want to add on to, that's the non-conforming part, that is actually a one-story flat roof structure, so we want to encompass that and get a nice roof over that. So the hardship is that that the house is not within the setback line, and it is no fault of the owners, as that was done in 1923, and they're quite a bit younger than that.
And of course, you will not be expanding the nonconformity, you'll just be continuing along that same line.
Exactly.
Any questions for the petitioner? Mr. Curtis.
I think you said it just goes straight up over the existing one-story bump out.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, any other questions? All right, not seeing any, I'll ask you to take a seat real quickly, and I'll open up the public hearing. Is there anybody who would like to speak on this issue? Not seeing anybody, I will close the public hearing and bring it back to this side of the table for additional discussion.
I'd like to start the discussion with a motion to grant the variance.
Motion by Mr. Curtis,
I'll support that.
second by Mr. Kroll. Mr. Curtis?
Yeah, it's a beautiful property, and 1923, it's no fault of their own that they, are in that non-conforming situation, and they're not adding to the problem by going up, they're not encroaching any further, they're not even extending the non-conforming by going back any further. I think it'll be a lovely addition.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I tend to agree with Mr. Curtis. They're not making it any more non-conforming, so we have an awful lot of homes in Royal Oak that, based on laws that I'm sure one time were made this legal, many houses aren't really even able to be renovated at all.
Or lack of ordinances,
Yeah.
frankly.
Yeah, so I think this is, they get a kitchen and a master suite. I mean, what more do you need in life? So I think that's a great addition.
Ms. Anderson?
Well, I'd also like to point out that the south side is nicely located next to the driveway and not so close to another house. So that gives me some satisfaction and comfort there. So I'll be supporting it.
Yes, sir.
I'll be in support too. I agree with the applicant. It's a well-designed, seamless addition to the home, and there's a clear hardship here too, so I'll be in support.
I'll echo everyone else has said. This is hardship that there just happen to be a house with already the existing setbacks already where they're at. I can't deal with it any other way, so I'll be in support.
All right, not seeing any other hands, I will go ahead and call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? You're all set, motion passes. Thank you all.
Quite a bit. Beside the drive.
Along to item D5 of new business, which is case number 180723, public hearing on the appeal of Megan Murphy, petitioner, and Lisa and Kevin Gleason, owners for the following variances. A, waive 87 feet of the minimum required 150-foot distance from residential property. B, waive 902 feet of the minimum required 1,000-foot distance from a school, playground, licensed childcare center to permit a tattoo microblading studio, which is defined as an adult-oriented business, which would be located at 28834 Woodward Avenue. Mr. Murphy.
This particular proposal was in front of the Planning Commission for site plan and special land use approval 2 days ago, and they granted approval contingent upon the petitioner obtaining the variances that you see in front of you tonight. As we discussed probably 2 months ago, the state law governs, there's a particular state law that governs body art facilities, and those facilities can offer different types of services, including tattooing, branding, or body piercing. And as we discussed before, the act of tattooing is essentially an indelible, placing an indelible mark of ink under someone's skin. And microblading is, as we've learned from the past, and the petitioner can confirm that again tonight, is a fairly different procedure. It's still the same license, still treated in the same manner under our ordinance, but it is a slightly different procedure. So therefore, it's governed under some particular provisions in the zoning ordinance which require that type of an establishment to be a certain distance from residential property, as well as some other specific uses such as outdoor playgrounds for schools, daycare centers, and such. And we do have directly across the street behind the business on Woodward Avenue, we have residential property, so it's unable to meet that distance requirement from residential. And close to the north is the site for the Shrine School, which has a daycare, obviously the school site, and a playground. So they're seeking those distance waivers, but they did receive site plan and special land use approval from the Planning Commission.
Excellent. Any questions for Mr. Murphy? Yes, sir.
The previous one which we did approve was within the beauty salon set up over there where there were several different booths, so therefore we had made it contingent upon a certain percentage. This one, because it's all one space.
It's not, is it? Is it? I
Yes,
thought it was part of something.
This is a fairly small tenant space.
Right.
And the petitioner is currently operating, they have a makeup application service. And so they're looking to add this as an ancillary element.
Right, which is fine. The question I have is, if for some reason in the future they end up going, is this tied to that spot if a tattoo place all of a sudden wanted to take in, if we grant it?
The board can make it specific to what the petitioner has provided to us, which is a list of personal services and microblading being simply an ancillary element to, or an ancillary service to the primary aspect of the property.
Okay.
And so if someone did come in with your traditional tattoo establishment, it wouldn't meet the approval that you may grant tonight, because their plan of operation would certainly be different.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, not seeing any. Is the petitioner present? Please come forward. Introduce yourself for the record if you would, and tell us about your plan.
Hi, I'm Megan Murphy. So to answer to, sorry, I'm like nervous. So 2 days ago, they specifically said, and I have no intention of having a tattoo shop, but that was part of their approval. And so what I do is a little different. It's like a beauty service. So it's a semi-permanent, technically a tattoo, but it's not the traditional tattooing. So, and I'm not sure if you have any other questions for me, but it's definitely a makeup studio. So it's not, there won't be any branding or anything like that either.
We got a pretty detailed lesson on exactly what microblading is a couple months ago, so
Yeah.
I know more about it than I ever thought I would need to. Ms. Anderson.
You just said semi-permanent. Is this a different type of microblading than the permanent one that I think came up before us before?
No, it's probably the same thing. So microblading fades out. It doesn't go as deep as a cosmetic tattoo, which is good though, because you won't have the same face in 30 years as you have now. So as it slowly fades out, you come back to get them redone. But I guess that's all just kind of splitting hairs and,
Replacing.
Any other questions? Not seeing any, I'm going to go ahead and open up the public hearing. Is there anybody in the audience who would like to speak on this? And we are down to one audience member, so I'm going with no, and I will close the public hearing and bring it back to this side of the table.
I'd like to grant the variance as requested with the stipulation that it's tied to the current beauty makeup business. Is that correct, Joseph, in wording like that?
Can we tie it to the plan commission approval?
You can, I would suggest that you make the motion to grant it based on the microblading being an ancillary service.
Okay. As Joseph said, I'd like to grant the variance as ancillary service.
And is there a second?
Support.
Mr. Mueller, Mr. Olfak.
As we had previously discussed, and even if you don't recall, this is a new type of business that's growing, and it's totally different than a tattoo business, so I don't see it as an adult-oriented business that we'd have to worry about the youth getting into. And this is a helpful service, especially for those who've had to go through other treatments or health-related issues. So I have no problem with this service being performed there.
Any other follow-up
Biggest
comments?
fear
Yes, sir.
last time was it being, somebody could just open up a tattoo parlor when this went out of business. And so this ability to do that gets rid of that fear or that problem. So that's why I'm supporting it.
Any other comments? And Mr. Murphy, I'm assuming this was noticed as any issue would be noticed, and
The Tuesday night's meeting as well as tonight's.
we have exactly 0 people speaking against it. Okay. If there's no other comments, I will call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All set, motion passes. Thank you so much. All right, so, well, we have other business first. Mr. Murphy, is there anything you wanted to say about the case F180502 at 1202 East 6th?
Other than earlier today, you received some correspondence from a petitioner that was in front of you in May for a fence variance request, and that fence variance request was not approved. The petitioner has provided you, as you received earlier today, with a written request to ask that you reconsider essentially their case.
When was that heard?
May. It was in May.
They'd already put up a
They built
6-foot
a-
vinyl fence on a corner.
1202 East 6th.
Oh, that's 6 foot up.
Yeah,
right?
it's
Yes.
already built.
They showed us posts and
Yeah.
it was all filled.
Here. You have that correspondence.
I don't know what they
You
got.
don't need to take any action if you
I didn't see that.
if you
Where's
don't
that?
feel there's need to.
Are
If
you
feel like-
representing that property, sir?
No, I'm not.
Oh, okay.
There was an email that was sent this afternoon.
Oh, I didn't see it.
Yeah, we just
Did
got
they
the
bring
email
up
today.
New information?
That would be for you to decide.
They had neighbor support letters, I believe. There's neighbor support.
Right, support and
I
so
don't really
forth.
care about neighbor support. I don't remember that one being very negotiable, actually, in my mind. I'd have to go back and revisit it, but I thought they were. I don't like when people go for forgiveness versus permission to begin with.
It's just a written correspondence. You don't have to take any action towards it whatsoever if you choose not to.
I would probably rehear it if they take it down.
That has not occurred.
I mean, the only thing I would say is, it would be a case that would probably take 5 to 10 minutes out of our time. It is a citizen of Royal Oak who pays taxes and plunk down their money, and if they have something that they want to say, I think it'd be polite of us to give them that audience. We can just say no again.
Well,
I think-
sorry.
I think they have to give me tell me why I want to hear this again. I don't remember it being something I want to hear again.
Mr. Olfak.
And also, you open up the can of worms. If we listen to them, then everyone starts to come back just because they don't like our decision. There's no new information, in my opinion. There's nothing that's going to change. They've went up and put something up that's not there. No, I won't.
Do you remember the vote? What was the tally of the
8 to
vote?
1, I remember the vote.
8 to 1?
Against.
Who voted for it?
I did.
You did? You want to rehear it? Do 8 to 1 again?
He's not capable of making motions.
No, that's right. Especially one.
So that dies on the vine?
Let's move on to public comment.
That moves us along to public comment. Did you have anything you wanted to say, sir?
That's here to watch.
All right. Why would you do that?
Are you studying to be a zoning board member?
Watch it on your smartphone.
If you aren't
Live.
confused by now.
I'm here with Ryan. I'm the intern for the city attorney's office.
Well, that's a good reason.
Forced labor.
I did not ask him to attend.
My intern tonight.
On your behalf. He
All right,
probably
so-
asked what the best board to go watch would be.
That would move us along to the mystery motion.
A motion to adjourn.
I'll be supporting that.
Motion to adjourn, second by Mr. Kroll.
Do we need any discussion?
Do we want discussion on the adjournment? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.